You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanak, session number 1097. I'm Joe Sanak, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we cover everything private practice to help you have a thriving practice you absolutely love. Sometimes we cover things that are more marketing and business, and other times we cover things that are a little more clinical and clinical. I don't know why my voice just like popped up like that. A little more clinical. And so today we're going to kind of have a mixture. We're going to be talking about people pleasing and things around that. And it could apply to you personally. It could also apply to your clients. But we're also going to be talking with Dr. Ilene Cohen, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist, author, and mother of 2 young girls. She is one of the most respected voices in the psychology of people pleasing and navigating the difficulty of living in intentional life while trying to maintain fulfilling relationships. Ilene, welcome to the Practice podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to talk people pleasing. We're going to talk about applying it to our own lives, and maybe we'll even get into taking something that you're into in the office and kind of turning that into books a little bit. So excited to kind of see where this conversation goes today.
Me too.
Yeah, so people pleasing. How'd you get into that?
Oh, well, so a lot of my clients, that's something they were suffering with. And also me personally, something I dealt with my whole life and was working on as I was becoming a therapist myself. So it really interested me in how I could help my clients, but also make those changes in my own life.
So what was that like? How did that look for you personally? You said that you were dealing with people pleasing. What are examples of what that looked like?
Well, it was very difficult for me to say no to things. I always felt like I had to say yes to everything in my personal and professional life. And at the time, probably my school career. So I was very exhausted, always, not wanting to hurt other people's feelings. It also looks like a hyper focusing on other people in their lives and how to make their lives better, how you could be the most helpful, and then kind of having ignoring your own self and what you might need and putting that on the back burner and feeling guilty when you did do anything for yourself. So that's kind of how it showed up in my life.
Yeah. Now I know you're the mom of 2 daughters. I'm a dad of 2 daughters. Mine are 10 and 13. And, whenever I have an expert on the show, I always like to look through that lens. When you think about maybe what society gave you or gave women in your generation, or maybe men too, in regards to people pleasing, what's like the baseline of what we were given from previous generations? And then I'd love to talk a little bit about changes that you're making as a parent with your kids that maybe I could apply as well.
Yeah, so I think I got the message that the women should be the caretakers, that we need to be concerned about others and their feelings, which is not a bad thing, of course, but it does become a bad thing when it's too much, when you're ignoring yourself for the caretaking role and then made to feel guilty if you are doing something for yourself as if it's selfish. So I think I got that message. Just be kind, be nice, give in to others, just to keep the peace, to make things feel better for everybody, which sometimes isn't always the right thing to do, depending on the situation. But if that's kind of the message that you receive, you just keep applying that to manage the relationship tension or whatever's happening in your life. And I think that is, I see it in men as well, of course. And it really, a lot of it is societal, but also depends on what happens in your family of origin and the role you take on in those relationships. But I definitely think that I received that messages that you need to do whatever you have to keep things calm and to make things better. And even if that includes ignoring your own needs.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's kind of overt ways that we, receive that message. Are there more like microaggressions or micro messages that kind of train people to comply, to follow what they're supposed to, maybe more than what would be considered appropriate or healthy?
Yeah, so even with I see with my own kids or other people with your kids, it's very subtle. You're not doing it on purpose, but just share that toy. It might be a new shiny toy they're enjoying, and then the sibling wants it or a friend, and you don't want to see them fight or have tensions. You're like, just share, be a good sharer, share that toy. And so that could be a small way of, oh, well, of ignoring their want of, let me play with this nice new toy that I'm enjoying. And why do I have to share it right now? So something different parents could do is say, okay, well, this toy is new and shiny for you. You can enjoy it right now, but maybe consider in 10 minutes if sharing is something that you want to do. Try to include everybody in resolving the conflict, not just doing what you need to do to soothe things over or what you think is going to look good on the outside to everybody around. Like, oh, I don't want my kid to be the one that's not sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a small example of that kind of playing out.
Yeah.
In
How
a
do you
way.
find the balance between, we all have to live in a society. We all have to compromise in different ways. We don't always get our way. And also, and sometimes that's at the expense of what we want, but then also learning to speak up for ourselves and say what we want and to not just be a people pleaser. Uh, with your kids or when you're working with other therapy clients or even training therapists, like how do you help people find that balance between both sides? Because I've seen those kids that they're not people pleasers at all. They're just little a-holes and they just do whatever they want. And it's just like, that's not healthy for society if you swing that far. And then there's other kids that are just so compliant. It's like, speak up for yourself a little bit. You don't have to do that. Like, how do you help parents and kids walk that line?
And those are usually siblings, right? One that is very
Totally. My oldest, it's like her big thing in therapy is learning to manage her emotions and not be as much of a tornado. And the younger one, who she's 10 now, so she's just kind of getting a little bit of those tween hormones, is finally speaking up. But it's like such a new language. She's just being such a jerk with it. And so it's just like, whereas the other one just speaks up all the time and has blatant disregard sometimes. So yeah, it often is siblings. And in my house, that is true.
Right. So we all have, just as humans, this urge to be our own individuals, but also be connected to others. And that's sometimes called the togetherness force. And it's how do we balance those? And some lean towards more togetherness and connection, which could look like accommodating and just giving in for the purpose of the group. And then others might lean more towards individuality. And that can look like, oh, let's just ignore everybody else's needs and, go with whatever I want. And those people, like I just said, siblings or even end up marrying each other as well. But so with clients, um, and in my own life, I try to look at balancing those two. And what happens is that the more anxious we get about a situation and the more tense, especially with our relationships or life stressors, the higher, the more stressed and anxious we are, the more we'll lean towards one of those. Um, so it's about, okay, how do we calm ourselves down, get more factual, and that could be in therapy, ask more questions, and then do what's not only best for ourselves, but also what's best for the group, which can be, a very difficult dance. But that usually comes from the more logical sides of us, knowing ourselves more, being more self aware about which way we lean towards. And I have to be honest with you, most of my clients, and myself included, the people that are seeking therapy are usually the ones that are too concerned with others and they're trying to find a way to bring themselves into the picture. I don't often see um, ones that are more inclined for the individuality, because sometimes it is working for them. They're not the one. It's the one that's too much for others, that they're more uncomfortable with the scenario, because it's really hard to lose yourself. It's really difficult to not be living from that place. So it's really coming to that terms. When can I come from a less anxious place, more thoughtful place, and do what it is I think is best in that moment, not what that anxiety is leaning me towards. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I wonder also how much of that anxiety, as a parent, that we bring into it, that it's like the kids pick up on that too. And so, if they know you want to look good to everyone else, then they're going to like kind of pick up on that anxiety too. Are there specific, maybe habits or techniques that in your family you do, or that have worked with other families to help just kind of mitigate the people pleasing messages that come through society?
So a lot of the times when I work with clients, and then for my own life, is we do something called the family genogram, and which is 3 generations of a family tree, and you see interactional patterns in families, and you see how they repeat. And like you just said, kids pick up on what their parents, not only what they do, but what they say, how they interact with others, and then that becomes their own default. And it could be one or the other. Say if your habit is to be a pleaser and give in, your kid might take that on and say, oh, I'm going to do that as well. Or they could do the opposite of, oh, this world is for me. Everything is about me. I can get my way by just being a little bit louder. So then they become the one that's more for the individual, to like too much of that extent. But you'll see that in family patterns, possibly marriages, that one was more dominant than the other, one was more accommodating than the other, and you'll see it work out. So what I do with my clients, and depending on what type, they might be in marriages now, they might not be, but they look at those patterns and then they see, how am I repeating that in my relationships now, whether it's with coworkers or, the romantic relationships, friendships, and life, and what can I do to change my part in those interactions. So if my part is the habit of, mitigating discomfort by just giving in, it takes a lot of effort on getting clear about what that person wants, how they can carve that time out, but also being able to do those behaviors, if in those times when somebody's asking them to do something and they don't want to do them. So it's like you're like training a new muscle, which is very difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I know that in our family, just finding little things like, how do you want to say goodbye to my parents, their grandparents? Like, do you want to give a high five, or do you want to give a wave, or do you want to give a hug? Just like helping them think about what they want in their body while still acknowledging this is your grandparent. You can't just walk out the door and ignore them. There's ways that we say goodbye in this family, but it doesn't have to be that we say force a hug. And just finding ways to be respectful, but also to speak up. So for a long time, I don't know if I came up with this or if I heard it from someone I interviewed on the podcast or read it, but I've said you always have 3 options. You can say yes when I say you need to do something. So I need you to unload the dishwasher. Okay, yeah, you're not going to get in trouble for that. You can say no, and you're going to get in trouble for that. Or you can respectfully advocate for your position. And, if I understand your situation, then maybe I'll change my mind if you do that respectfully. Now, there's going to be times when I just say, no, you just need to unload the dishwasher. But there might be other times where you say, hey, I need to finish reading this chapter in the book for school, or I'm really into this video game for a few minutes. I have 5 minutes left on my timer. To me, that idea, like how I was raised, it was like, I'm the parent. I said it. You need to do it. You need to be compliant always. But to me, that's not like how the world actually is. There's lots of nuance. There's lots of gray areas. Otherwise, every time you got pulled over by the police, you would always get a ticket because you broke the rules. But the thing is there's all sorts of dynamics. It could be race. It could be, socioeconomic status. It could be your past driving record. That the world isn't always as black and white as maybe we were raised. And so to me, I think it's important with the girls to say, yeah, feel free to respectfully advocate. And most of the time I can have some wiggle room, assuming you do that respectfully, to build that muscle of advocacy, of speaking their minds, while also falling within just what's kind and part of being in a family.
Right. You're really helping them to be critical thinkers, have their own solid self, but also be respectful that they are part of a world and relationships. And that's, important also.
I am so excited about Alma. When I had my private practice, I struggled building my caseload, attracting the right clients, managing the business side. And honestly, one of the reasons I didn't take insurance was it was so difficult to navigate. So many of my consulting clients deal with these problems as well. And Alma supports clinicians in building rewarding private practices with simplified insurance credentialing in under 45 days, enhanced reimbursement rates, and guaranteed 2-week payback, plus a free profile in their searchable, filterable directory, making it easy for clients who are the right fit for your practice to find you. Learn more about how Alma could support your private practice at helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to learn more. Now, Ilene, where do therapists drop the ball when it comes to people pleasing? So, the typical therapist that's listening, if they're working with families, if they're working with kids, or even, adults, like where are they dropping the ball when it comes to people pleasing and teaching their clients or guiding their clients in a different way?
Well, I don't know because I wouldn't be in their sessions, but I'm trained systemically, so to see people in their relationships and in their systems. So I would say if maybe an individually trained therapist might just see people pleasing as like an inherent issue within the person and not necessarily see how it derived in their family context and how it's continually being repeated in patterns in their relationships. So I take all of that into account. Another thing is that how much of people pleasing is driven by anxiety. People pleasing, in its essence, is really just somebody trying to manage their anxiety and tension by accommodating, giving in. And it eases that anxiety and tension in that moment, but it creates more anxiety later down in the road for that person. So it is very anxiety driven and relationship driven. And I'm not sure how other therapists conceptualize it, but I would say if they're not conceptualizing in that way, they have a blind spot.
Yeah. And what are kind of the ongoing either tools or mindsets that you would say therapists can use to help with people pleasing with their clients?
Well, I would say what's always helpful is working on ourselves and seeing how hard that is for anything, that when we have something that, none of us are perfect and we have things in ourselves, whether it's people pleasing or something else that we need to work on, and especially in our relationships. And when we do that, we can see how difficult that is. We can, look at our clients more at their level and with empathy. And so if they come to us this week after week saying, I didn't say no again, or I did it again, we can be empathetic on that struggle and know how difficult it is to change patterns or do something that really makes us anxious or tense or gives us headaches, whatever it is that we're trying to avoid. So I think something important, is for therapists to look at themselves, and so they can come from that place of empathy and then see maybe where they're people pleasing and how they might have made changes, and that could also help their clients as well.
Now I want to switch gears a little bit. You've taken this work in the sessions, and you've done a lot to kind of help the world beyond sessions. There's tons of therapists that they are great at trauma and they want to write a book or do a TED talk or do more trainings beyond that, but they have no idea where to start. So as you started to discover kind of people pleasing as one of your specialties, what were some of your first steps to take that beyond the counseling sessions?
Articles. So you can, there's tons of amazing websites out there that allow you to write articles like Psychology Today, Tiny Buddha, Psych Central, and you can do bite size, an idea you had. And a lot of my ideas do get, whether it's my personal life or in sessions, I'll write them down, ooh, this would be a great thing to discuss in an article. So I start with articles, see how I felt writing it, see how people receive it, and then that helps with ideas for books. For my people pleasing book, I wrote a few articles and I got a lot of emails from those articles and a lot of good comments. And I said, wow, this is something that's resonating with people. I'm like, it just worked out that way, that I really, I don't write anything that I don't need to learn. And I don't write about anything that I haven't experienced. So, but I also want that piece of what are other people, are they going to take something away from it? So the articles help with saying, okay, people are interested in this. And that's the first stepping stone that says, okay, then I can turn that into a book.
Mm. So starting with articles, then moving from there. And then what was the process of writing a book like for you?
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer. I've been writing since I was little. I happen to love psychology, and I learned so much in school, and on my own, I'm always learning. But so I knew I always wanted to write. I just didn't know how it was going to manifest. And a lot of the ways that I process information is through writing. So for me, it was a good time. I had my first child. And I know it doesn't sound like a good time, but I wasn't working and I felt like my brain was turning into mush. So I just started with the articles and and then I started slowly. I did an outline and I just wrote a little bit a day. Like it didn't have to be a lot. And I'm someone that I do things in bite sizes. I'm like a snail, but somehow things end up accomplished. And so that's how I began. I had a little extra time. Finally, I wasn't like really working, and I just slowly with my outline wrote a little bit a day, and eventually it got done. I mean, for sure, my first book took the longest, but that's kind of how it worked out for me.
Mm. And what did the marketing of that book look like? I know that for me, when Thursday is the New Friday came out, um, you know, doing the marketing for the book was almost harder than writing the book. What did you do? What have you done to market the books?
I have the same. Marketing is difficult. And so after the book, I made just notebooks of, again, baby steps of things I could do each day. And what I find is things change so much. So at the time my first book came out was like 2017. So Facebook was huge. So I was like very active on Facebook and ads. And again, article writing, which also some of the websites allow me to do like giveaways. And then on Amazon, I learned about Amazon ads. So I really had to like slowly learn about marketing and did a little bit towards it. But I think the most helpful was like writing articles, the Amazon ads, and as well as just the social media. But social media has changed. I think Instagram is a better outlet right now, and that's something that I changed. I don't see as much traction on Facebook, but I think also Instagram's changing. So I'm sure there's a lot of new things out there, and also getting on Goodreads, interacting with people on there, and then starting to get reviews was very helpful.
Mm. Yeah, what would you say for people that have ideas like that? It sounds like writing articles and just kind of starting capturing the ideas. What else would you say is helpful in regards to wanting to take your ideas beyond the counseling session?
Well, I think it's knowing, that it's a new skill and that there's no good writers, just good rewriters. And I think people also get tripped up in trying everything, trying to be perfect and just never do it. I couldn't even tell you how many drafts of my books I went through. And it's hard for me to remember because I have a lot of self-help books out there. But now I'm writing my first like novel, and I feel like I'm in kindergarten again. I'm like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
and it's reminding me of what I went through when I wrote my first, like just those insecurities of not feeling good enough. Can I actually do this? Learning a new skill, reading. So what I do a lot, and what I did with my self-help too, is I listen to like YouTube videos on other people's experiences and their tips. So I'm sure there's things on self-help. I read books on that, how, organizing books and writing them. So slowly getting educated and taking the small steps so it doesn't become like so overwhelming. And then actually getting something on the page. And it doesn't have to be good. I used to do like writing hours, like these are my hours. And especially I started with kids, so I knew like this is all I'm going to get. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's jibber jabber, and that's okay too. And then sometimes I was really in the flow, but I knew like this is what's happening. So it's really being committed, shushing those very negative voices, and just keeping at it and not giving up.
Hmm. Any tricks on how you stayed organized with writing and with your ideas and all that? I know everyone has their own techniques of how they do that.
Yeah, everybody stays organized differently. I've always been a very organized person and always keep agendas, have to have everything written out. So that's what I did. Like I had a notebook just for the writing. I had it very organized on the topics I wanted to discuss. Um, so that helped me. But I know some people that that trips them up, and they just write and it comes out, and then afterwards they organize it. Um, and so my thing would just be get started and know how your brain works, know how you work best, and then do it that way. But for me, it was like having that notebook, having everything outlined, knowing my time, that this is my time to do it. And often I found though, even like if I just sat there for 10 minutes, like something happened, even if I didn't feel like it. And even if it was only one sentence that was good, something happened and that
Right.
led me in that direction. Or whether it is just, oh, let me just, it helps also too a lot is reading. Just like if you're not feeling moved or you're not feeling inspired, you can, just read a book on the topic you want to write about. Read an
Right.
article, and that can, inspire you as well. And then you can put that in your outline.
Yeah, I found that if I found different kind of rabbit holes to go down as I was writing the book, to just find stories or different things, and there was different books that I was listening to while I was writing it. Not what like I would go for a walk in between writing and like listen to different books while I was on that walk, um, and, and that helped me have my brain kind of thinking about like what do I like about this person's writing that I'm listening to, and like when I was doing the chapter on curiosity, to read this whole story about where the topic like or where the phrase curiosity killed the cat came from, like this crazy story from the early 1900s about a cat getting stuck in a chimney making national news. Like it was just a weird story that made it into the book. And so to me it just made it more entertaining to also be kind of discovering parts of the book throughout the writing of the book, rather than it just being like, oh, I just got to write all the stuff that I bullet pointed. I could say, okay, this chapter's on curiosity. What else does it need? Okay, it needs a little more research. It needs a little more stories. Like, what am I finding interesting about curiosity? Like, how am I curious about curiosity? That just made it a lot more entertaining for me. Well, the last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Um, don't give up. And at first, it could be, especially private practice, is very slow, and then it's kind of at some point is like a tipping point. But if you know that's something you want to do and you're set up, and you're going to be useful to people, just keep at it and find what works for you.
Mm. So awesome. If people want to connect with your work, get your books, where can we send them?
So drilene.com, doctor spelled out, then ILENE, or at Dr. Ilene on social media, Instagram, and also all my books are on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, no matter what your goals are, whether they are to grow your private practice or to do audience building like this, we have plenty of things that can help you out. As you heard at the top of the show, we have some consulting spots that have opened up. We've brought on some new consultants. So whether you have just a handful of people that are working at your practice or whether you've got 50 or more, we have a consultant that can help you, whether you're private pay, whether you're insurance-based, W-2, 1099, we have people that can help you with every single phase of practice. Just head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/apply, and you and I will talk for 30 minutes. It's actually me. I don't pass that off to anyone else. I talk with every single consulting client or potential consulting client, and then we'll pair you up with whoever the best consultant is based on your goals and kind of what you're looking for. So again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. And I don't know about you, but when it comes to insurance, just learning that whole system of credentialing and reimbursement rates and getting paid back is not something I want to specialize in at all. That's why we've partnered with Alma. Alma helps with simplified insurance credentialing in under 45 days. Plus, you get a free profile in their directory, which is going to make it easier for clients to find you. Head on over to helloalma.com/Joe to learn more. Again, that's helloalma.com/Joe. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.